All right, we've been last week and then this week in a series called Disrupt. And, the word, you guys remember the definition I said about disrupt? It seems like a negative word, but in reality, the definition of it isn't negative. It just means that you're disrupted from going the way, the normal way, or the way that you had been going. So it's good to get disrupted, because when we're walking in sin, when we're walking the way of just doing what I want and not following God, or in something that is not right, then I need to be disrupted. And we have been disrupted. God's disrupted us. He's taken us from the world and placed us in His Spirit, and we can walk in Him and in His strength, in His glory. Isn't that amazing? That's wonderful. I'm glad that I've been disrupted. I'm glad. Today I'm going to title my message, How Do You Know? How do you know? How do you know? And I'll explain that a little bit, but in this section of Romans 8, it talks a little bit more about suffering. I know you guys are like, oh, those are the ones that I try to, avoid, those scriptures, even though they're like all over the New Testament. They're maybe trying to tell us something that you might have to go through something in your life. You might not be able just to walk, on clouds and see little baby angels all the time. You might have to have some hard times in order to be strengthened, in order for God to bring you to the place that you're supposed to be. I mean, it just might happen. It will happen, actually. I'm just trying to ease you into it. But Romans 8, starting verse 18, says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." I love this. I love this. The sufferings of this present time. He didn't say that this possibilities, maybe a little bit. But he's like, the sufferings of this present time that we will walk through. The deal is they won't even be worthy to be compared. They don't even measure up. They don't even exist compared to the glory of God and Him, who He is. That shall be revealed in us. Amen. Wow. This suffering, this issue, this thing, somebody talking bad about you, or the issue with my family that's going on right now, or we're not getting along, or I'm not saying specifically my family, I'm just in general. Like the family issue, the sickness, the mean boss, what have you, there's lots of stuff that we will go through, but compared to the glory of God that will be revealed in us, not as we sidestep or not go through suffering, but as we walk through those things and allow God to be manifest in us, the things of God that will be revealed, the glory of God that will be revealed in us will so far outweigh the trial, the tribulation, the fire. It will so far outweigh, like if you put it on a scale and you just drop God's glory, and all of a sudden, it's like this, and then the other things like it flew really far. If you couldn't tell, it flew really far. He's saying it doesn't even compare to the glory of God that will be revealed in us. Verse 28, let's skip down to 28. It says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God." That's amazing. Oh, I saw all things work together for good. For those who love God. To those who are called according to His purpose, for whom He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among the brethren. Moreover, Whom he predestined, these he also called. Whom he called, these he also justified. And whom he justified, to these he also glorified. See, God walked on this earth. Jesus came and walked on this earth so that we could follow. See, so we can follow in the footsteps of him. And we love to say, good comes to those who love God. That's awesome. That's amazing. But there's these steps, this process that I'm seeing here that he says, for whom he foreknew, he predestined. He foreknew us. He knew us before we were born. He knew who I was going to be and what he was going to have to do in me in order for me to be all that I am in God, and which is a continual work as I walk on this earth. It won't stop. But then he predestined. He called. He gave things to me. He predestined. He placed things here for me. So not only did he know, but he gave and placed things for me to do, and then he predestined. And he called. He justified. Justified, he glorified. He called me into him, into his purposes. And I've been justified. Not because I can do anything. So you see this progression that we're going on here. It's he knew me and he's placed good things before me and he's called me, and then he's justified me because he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die for my sins. I'm not justified on my own account or ability or strength or anything, but because of Christ. And then after that, it says he also glorified. We want the glory, but we don't want the journey. We want the glory, but we don't want the trial. We want the glory, but we want to just get there, you know? It's like travel. The faster we are able to travel, the faster we want to go. It's like people used to have fun in the journey. And now the journey is just horrible. You know, and it's the same in our walk with God. We just I know that we used to walk in this journey with God, and it was a wonderful thing to see all of who he is along the way and how he works in me. But now we fly planes, so we kind of go over a lot of the stuff. And so our journey with God is more of like a flyover is what we want. And, you know, and then now we're like, so somebody's developing, like teleportation, right? Because I need to get there faster. It's like there's something in the journey. There's things that are developed in us. There's, things that we see and that we grow in along the way that if we teleport, we miss all that stuff. So my question is, how do you know? Because if you've never been tested, if you've never been verified, if you've never been put through a trial or a situation or the fire, then how do you know that you're a Christian? How do you know that God will come through? How do you know that he'll heal you from that sickness or deliver you from that sin that you've been living in? How do you know that God will come through in your family or in your job situation? How do you know? See, we look and say, God, why do I have to, walk through these things? And God's not doing things to us, but he can use things to shape us, to mold us, to form us, to fashion us. He can use these trials and these situations. See, in Peter, 1 Peter, he talks again. It's amazing, these guys. We read Romans or 1 Peter or James. We read a scripture from James. They're all saying the same thing. You're going to go through stuff. But how do you see what you're going through? Do you see it as something that is just impossible and nothing good can come from it? Or do you see it in God's eyes and that he says, I can do all things, and you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you? So you may be going through something, but you can possibly see it that God is working in you something through this trial. Wow. Peter says, for you have been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example for you to follow in his steps. Christ suffered, and he has left us an example. See, Christ came and died on the cross. He suffered for us so that we could have this relationship, and he walked through the trial. He walked through the fire in order to bring us in a relationship with God. He walked through that. But the problem is we want to go and not necessarily walk in his footsteps, but get what he got. You know, C.S. Lewis, and I'll probably butcher this quote, but he said, like, this statement kind of resembles what I'll say, but sorry. But he said, the Son of God came and suffered and went through trials and testing, and the devil tested him, put pressure on him. And how dare we think that we're better than Jesus Christ, the Son of God? How dare we think that somehow we could get the glory without going through the fire, going through the trial? How dare we think that I could just go, it's like, Jesus walked this path. There's little tape things here, and it's like, wow, heaven glorified by God is down that direction. And we're like, trial, fire, tough situation, all this. And we're like, yep, yeah. Whoo, there's the glory. Yeah, I got it. Woo, the glory of God. But we don't want to walk through the things that are building, that God is using to fashion in us things of who he is. We don't want to walk through the things that are being used to strengthen us and to make in us the things of God. Oh gosh. God works these things out for the good of those who love him. 1 Peter 1:3 says, blessed be the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Oh, it's amazing. Blessed be the God. God, thank you so much because you brought us to a new place through Jesus Christ. In verse 6 it says, in this you greatly rejoice. Rejoice in that. Get up, dance, shout, say, God, thank you for bringing me to this place because of what Jesus Christ did for me. Get up, do it. Don't sit around, sulking. Christ did something for you. But then he says, I'm going to see. You knew there was a but coming, right? But he says, in this you greatly rejoice. Though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Wow. It says, rejoice in what God has done through Jesus Christ for you. Rejoice. Shout it from the rooftops. Be glad. But he says, but don't forget that you're probably going to have to walk through things that are going to affect and change you. But it's not for no purpose. It's so that you can be used by God, so that you can know. See, it says that the genuineness of your faith. How do you know your faith is genuine? How do you know that you can be used by God? How do you know that he's going to come through whenever you're having a bad day? How do you know that he'll heal you? How do you know? It reminds me of this show called Forged in Fire. Anybody ever watched Forged in Fire on TV? I mean, guns, knives, anything like that. It's just cool. And this show, it's like a competition, and they make knives and swords and stuff. But I was looking at this, and I parallel this with our walk with God and who he is and how he uses these trials and situations. In this competition, these guys come and they make knives. They're bladesmiths and amazing, artists making these knives. And they have this competition to see who can make the best one. And what they do is they take this metal that's like has no form. It's just raw metal, and they put it in the fire so that it could be heated up, so that it could be manipulated, so that they can push it, press on it, hammer it, and make it into something that can be wielded and used by them. Do you guys see where I'm going? I see the same thing with us. If I've never been in the fire, I've never been softened up and melted down and pushed and molded and hammered on by God. If I've never been formed, I'm just this raw metal. How do I know? And really, I can't be used by God because I've never really gone through anything. I've never had God work in my life. But this metal, they put it in the fire and they heat it up and it gets soft and they hammer it. And then as they're hammering it outside the fire, it starts cooling down. It's coming, into some shape, but they have to put it back in the fire in order to heat it back up so it could get soft again so that they can shape it some more. And see, they don't just put it in one time and warm it up, melt it, or not melt it, but soften it up, and then all of a sudden they make something. Well, maybe they could make a little bitty knife. See, if we've gone through one trial, maybe we could be a little bitty knife for God. I'm a small weapon for God. I'm something that can maybe, help open a package of peanuts for God. But they have to keep putting this piece of metal into the fire and heating it up and hammering on it and forming it and shaping it and not making just a little pocket knife, but a Bowie knife or a machete or even a sword. But it has to keep getting heated up and stretched and formed and shaped by its creator, using the fire to warm it up, to soften it up. And I love this, that whenever they're finished with the forming and the shaping, you know what they do? They heat it up again. They heat it again. They put it in the fire and they heat it up real hot. It's real hot, glowing, red, orange. And then they put it down into the oil or the water, and it's called quenching, tempering. They quench it in the water, but it's called tempering. What it does is it hardens the metal harder than it ever has been before, which is amazing. But it causes by fire, by heat, that hardens it, that allows it to be a weapon. But you know what? If corners have been cut, if steps have been skipped, if the forming, the hammering, the pressing has been rushed, that in that time, whenever they quench the heat on this sword, you know what will happen? The sword can warp. The sword can show stress fractures. The sword can split apart. The pieces of metal that have been pressed together will split. But we want to walk around and take the fast track to the glory of God and not walk through the fire and go through these issues and things and allow God to move in us. But I'm telling you that when you get to the end, you get to the part where the glory is and the fire comes again just to heat us and temper us and strengthen us and say, okay, now it's time for you to be hard. And that all of a sudden we're quenched and we're like the sword that was rushed. Or there's this fracture, a stress fracture that makes the knife or the sword not usable. A beautiful sword. It looks amazing. But you can't swing it at anything because it's just going to snap in half. Unless it was taken through the steps, through the fire and pressure and hammering and God using these things in order to form in us more of who he is. Then when we get further along, we don't fracture, we don't bend, we don't break because we've gone through the fire before. Amen. Second Corinthians chapter 4 says, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Wow. Our light affliction. I think it's funny. They throw these things in. It's like, if you wreck a car, I may have wrecked the car a little bit. No, it was totaled. You know when you talk to somebody, I feel like they're just trying to ease us into this thing. For the light affliction, which may be but for a moment and maybe for a year. But if you think about what are they thinking about here? He's talking, if you're looking to the end and not to what's right in front of you, I see heaven. I see eternity. I see God. So this year, this 2 years, this stuff that I'm walking through may feel like forever right now, but if I look to eternity and say, God, spending eternity with you in your glory, it's but a moment. It's just this small thing that I'm walking through, and God can use it to do great things in us. Here's a C.S. Lewis quote that I actually wrote down. He says, we want not so much a father, but a grandfather in heaven. A God who said of anything we happen to like doing, what does it matter so long if they are contented? We want not necessarily a father who corrects and guides and leads us, not somebody that allows us to walk through things so that he can show us and tell us how we should have dealt with that or what we can do to walk through that. We just want a grandfather that just says, oh, you want candy? I got candy. You want to go to the park? I can take you to the park. But God is our Father. He's here to show us the ways that we're supposed to walk. He's here to show us who he is and how we can be more like him. He's here to form us and fashion us into the likeness of him. And I can't do that if I've not been taken through the fire. They can try all they want to hammer that metal when it's cold, but nothing's going to happen. It's not going to move. But put into the fire, that metal can be shaped into an incredible, incredible weapon, same as us. Walking through the fire, walking through the trial, we can be shaped into incredible, weapons, incredible people that are used by God, that are ready and willing to go when he says to go, that are sharpened, ready to cut through anything that can come against us. But if we've gone through the heating process, if we've gone through the trial and situation, and God has shaped us and formed us. Wow. My brethren, this is James. He says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. What? Okay, not only are you talking about going through trials, but now you're saying count it all joy. Why don't you go ahead and be happy about it whenever you go through something? Not only just go through it, not only let it change you and use you, but count it all joy. Be happy. But I love what he says. When you go through various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally in life without reproach, and it will be given to him. Look, it says, count it all joy that you're walking through this situation, because it produces patience. Remember I said we all don't want to be patient. We want to get to the glory, but not go through the fire. He says, be happy that things happen. Because whenever you're patient, whenever you walk through things the right way, you're not skipping. Do you realize that if you try to skip over the journey, you're missing, I don't know how many things that God wants to give you and bless you with along the way? It's not only a process of learning and being formed and fashioned, it's a process of blessing and a process of him showering down his glory and blessings on you along the way. So James says, have patience. Enjoy the journey. Learn the things of God as he's walking you through the trial and through the situation. And have fun, because you can along the way. It's all, see, I'm no scientist, but I play one on TV. But I've read some things in a comic book that said, no, I'm just kidding. I'm trying to be funny now. But they say that the way that you think about things will determine the outcome. Now, I'm not one of those think it and it's going to happen people. But I do know that the determination of how we walk out of a situation is based on how I feel about it. Because if I am down and feel like this thing is going to get me, this thing is going to destroy me, I don't know if I can make it through this. I may make it out of it, but I'll probably come out feeling weaker and worse than I did coming into it. But if I can think, God, you are good. And I know that through any trial, any situation, you can create something. You can use it to form and fashion me into a sword. Not just a little pocket knife, but a sword that can be used by you. That anything I walk through, God, I'm walking through something, but what are you going to do? How are you going to use it? What are you going to do in me that makes me stronger, makes me better? God, I know you can. I know you will. And when I walk through that thing, I will come out stronger. I will know who God is and how he's worked in my life. See, I didn't create something by thinking of it, but I allowed God to use me by thinking the right things, by understanding who God is, and not just making, a mess of it and being all down and depressed. Excuse me. Peter says, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you're going through as if something strange were happening to you. Instead, be very glad, rejoice, because they're going to make you partners with Christ. Job said, When God is finished with me, I will shine like gold. When God is finished. Now, God doesn't do it. He's not putting his thumb on you, making mean faces and putting you through something. But I know that my God can use whatever we're going through. I know he can take and not do something to us, but use what we're going through to form us and to fashion us. See, Job said, this thing, when God's done with me, I'm going to shine like gold. You guys know that gold doesn't come out of the ground shiny? Just imagine you're a piece of gold, but you've been plucked right out of the ground. Gold comes out of the ground, just a rock, laced with dirt and sediment and dirty and all this stuff. Do you know what they have to do to make it the thing that becomes your ring? They put it in the fire. They put the gold in the fire. They melt it down so that the impurities, the dirt, the mess, the stuff can rise to the top and be just taken off. But without being put to the fire, that stuff cannot come out. And Job says, whenever God's done with me, I'm going to shine like gold. I'm a rock right now, but I'm going to shine like gold. He's going to take these impurities, these things that are in my life, and I will walk through the fire, but he's going to allow those things to be just scooped right off. That slag, that they call it slag, that dirt. It's dirt and other impurities that are taken out of the gold because it's put into the fire. Wow, this is not it's a bummer of your life, you're going to walk through something. I'm saying you're going to go through something, but God is going to use you to do great things. And if he's going to use you to do great things, he's going to allow you to be formed and fashioned. So just like these guys in the Bible, count it all joy. Be happy about it. It may be a little tough. It may not feel great whenever you're going through the trial or the situation, but count it all joy because God's going to use you, because God is going to create in you a sword that can be used by him to do great things. Wow, we'll go through stuff, but as I go through it, the more that I go through it, the more I can be used by him, as long as I'm allowing him to form me and shape me in the time that I'm going through the trial. If I'm allowing him to mold me and make me, then I know that I get further down the road, he will be able to use me because he's the master craftsman. He's my creator. He's the one that's been hammering on me and shaping me. So he will be able to use me in those times. Amen? Why don't you stand with me?